We're back out here once again, and today we're talking about all the crazy weather and conditions the month of April can throw at us, and what are the lures and presentations I'm using to keep catching those bass all month long. Stick around, we're going to talk all about it. This is what happens when you notice your camera's off. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I did that for that? I did that for that? All that. Here I am afraid I'm not even recording. And the thing was, is I was pausing it. It was paused. It was still. And this little dude right here. This. Alright, little guy, grow up and be a 10-pounder next time. And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing, and here it is already the month of April. And that means for us here in the Deep South, well, we are already in the post-spawn phase for bass fishing. And our bass will actually be going into their summer mode here before too long as the temperature heats up. For the middle part of the country, Gunnersville, Chickamauga, Grand Lake, you guys are right in the middle of your spawn right now. And if you go further north, well, then you're getting into the pre-spawn. So that means variations in the bass fishing depending on where you are in the country. And the month of April, well, it's going to be very much like the month of March, where that weather is all over the place. Conditions are all over the place. So I kind of wanted to do this video as a deep dive based on varying conditions, not just a generic, these 5 baits work in April, but these are the baits that I'm throwing based on the conditions that I'm seeing whenever I go out to the lake. And this is going to be the rod that I'm doing most of the work on in this video. The fine folks at Honding were nice enough to send me this to try out and give a review on. This is the Honding M1 spinning reel and the M1 medium 7-foot spinning rod. Now they sent these to me and they asked me to try them out and give you guys my thoughts on these. So this is going to be the setup that did most of the heavy lifting for this video. And I have to say, well, I was more than pleasantly surprised. I really like this rod, and this reel is pretty good too. Now it's not perfect. There are some things that I found that were problems with them, but overall, very, very satisfied with this. So we're going to feature this rod and reel during this video quite a bit. And like I said, I'm going to put the links for these in the comments section below and in the description below, so you guys can check it out if you want to. But anyway, let's start at the beginning. We have calm water. We have pretty much a clear sky. We don't really necessarily have a whole bunch of pressure, but even if we did, this is still a great presentation for that. And that is just a regular old wacky rig, right? A wacky rig can be a very good presentation on most days when it's calm. Now, if we start to get a little bit windy, I'm going to be switching from this because these get blown around in the wind and the current very, very much. So that kind of makes them harder to work with, especially if you're fishing them on a finesse combo, which I usually am. But past few days, this is what I started with whenever I got to the lake. It's a go-to for me. It's a confidence bait for me, and they work so well at enticing those fish. Now, you're not going to really get reaction strikes with these because of how slow they float down, which is why a lot of anglers don't like using something like this. They want to power fish, and that's fine. But this right here, this is a presentation I have tied on whenever I'm heading out to the lake, and I just kind of want to test the water. If I see that it's calm, maybe a little bit of ripple, not so much wind. And like I said, you can have overcast skies, you can have bluebird skies. All that does is pretty much change the color of the worm that I'm using. Now, if we do have some stain in the water, if we've got less than, I don't know, 3 to 5 foot visibility in that range, and maybe just a few ripples on the water, maybe some cloud cover in the sky, well, then I'm going with the good old tail spinner worm. And this is another fantastic presentation that you can use whenever it's relatively calm. And I wouldn't necessarily throw this in super muddy water. I wouldn't necessarily throw this in super stained water or even really windy water. Whenever you've got a little bit of chops, some ripples, and it doesn't really matter again for the overcast or bluebird skies, this will work either way. You can just adjust the colors a little bit. But this is a great presentation. Now, I'm going to be fishing this deeper than I would a wacky rig. This, I'll put a 1/8 ounce bullet weight on it, or a 1/4 ounce bullet weight, and a 4/0 or 3/0 EWG or worm hook, and that's how I'm going to be working this particular presentation. These are great in the weeds, in the thick of the grass, but they're also great around different types of structure, flooded brush, laydowns, and it's another great way to entice those bass. It's a little bit slower. You can drag it like you would a Texas rig. You can give it a couple of hops like you would a jig. Also, what I like to do is I like to pop it up, give it a few cranks in the water, let it swim a little bit, and then just kill it and let it sit and dead stick it for whatever, 5, 10, 15 seconds. Or if I really want to be different, I might slowly swim it like I would a swim bait. And I've had success doing all of those retrieves. So if you haven't tried the tail spinner worm, give it a try. Chances are nobody else on your lake is going to be throwing something like this. So you really get to show those bass something different. Now, if we have a little bit more wind, we have a little bit more chop on the water, again, it can be clear, it can be cloudy. We can go to something like a spinnerbait. If it's clear out, if it's cloudy out, then we're going to adjust the type of spinnerbait that we're throwing because there's some variation. Normally, I'm doing the tandem blade. I'm going to have one willow blade and I'm going to have one Colorado blade, just like I have on this Guggen Zinger here. Now, I've got just a regular Rage swimmer on here, but a lot of times I won't even use a trailer at all if I want to shore up that presentation and, shrink it up just a little bit because I feel that those bass might be nipping at it and missing it. They may want something smaller. That's one of the ways we can adjust this presentation. Another way is we can look at the chop on the water and how much wind that we have. For your average condition, we got some wind, we've got a little bit of wave, we might have a little bit of cloud cover. Well, I'm going with the tandem blade. But if we've got a lighter type of wind and maybe we have some, bluebird sky or more sun, well, I will go with a double willow blade configuration and usually gold blades. The skirt color, that's up to you. I like a white because of what it mimics. It mimics the shad and the shiner that are in the big lake and the various other lakes around here that I fish. So that works well. I also like to use a green and orange skirt because, again, that mimics what those bass are feeding on, like a sunfish, bluegill, shellcracker, and whatever. But a spinnerbait can be a great presentation along laydowns, along flooded brush. You don't want to go into it, but working around it can be very, very effective. Now, next up, if you want just a little bit of change of pace from that spinnerbait, you've got similar conditions, but maybe you have a little bit more vegetation. Well, something like a chatterbait is great. Now, this is what I was showing my wife to use just the other day. She'd never fished a chatterbait before, and we had some windy conditions. We were working some hydrilla flats, and it was a great change of pace because we had other boats in our area that were working spinnerbaits. This turned out to be the ticket as she caught a really nice fish. It didn't take long for her to do it. It was her first bladed jig fish that she'd ever caught, and now she wants to keep one tied on because it worked for her. So this is going to be something that you can change up to from a spinnerbait if you want to have a change of pace bait. You see other guys are throwing spinnerbaits, or maybe you just want to have a change of pace. You might want to do something like this or even an underspin. But again, I'm working this in pretty much the same types of conditions, whether we've got some wave, we've got some wind, maybe we've got some cloud cover. And how I'm fishing this is based on what type of cover I'm fishing. It comes through hydrilla, comes through grass just fine. But when it comes to wood, when it comes to rock, things like that, I'm going to be working around it because it will get hung up on those types of things. A good way to do it is to, if you're in a boat, parallel to the bank, make casts and bring it to you along the parallel part of the bank. If you've got laydowns, you've got brush in the water, try to cast to the farthest part out. Not that you see, but that you think is down under the water. What you see is probably only halfway. Go all the way out and then bring it back to you. In the summertime, this place is just straight nuts on the weekends. Boy, his boat is loud. Oh, there we go. I got him. He's putting up a fight. Good bait. Oh, come here, buddy. Come here, buddy. Not a bad little fish. Not a bad little fish. Well, we know where they are. I have to give myself a little bit of string. Come on. There we go. Well, that's two. Not one of them as big as yours, but that's still, he's right at a pound. Maybe a little bit better, but right at a pound. Pretty fish. All right. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Now, for the last presentation, if you're in a little bit deeper water and you want to work something a little bit quicker, those fish have got some good energy. You can see that they've got some good activity and they are really chasing bait. Well, obviously something like a square bill is going to be money. You're into that 5 to 10 foot range. Something like this can be great. And if you have really pressured waters, well, this KVD doesn't have rattles in it, so it's a much quieter presentation. It's not going to be silent because the hooks and the rings are going to make plenty of sound, but even still, this can be great whenever you have a lot of pressure on the lake. I use these more than I use pretty much any other type of square bill whenever I'm fishing the big lake, simply because of the amount of pressure that's on there. And this shad pattern, this sexy shad pattern, has been money for me. A bluegill pattern has also worked well. Now in the springtime, you may want to go with a brown, you may want to go with a red, depending on where those crawfish are at, if you have them in your lake, in their molting cycle. If they've just molted, they're going to be bright red. You may want to go with a red square bill or a red lipless crankbait. But if they haven't had it, or it's been a while since they've molted, you know, something like a brown. But I like to use this shad pattern. I also like to use a bluegill pattern. Those will work well for me. Base what you have to throw, base what you want to throw on the forage species that those bass are fishing. And again, like we talked about before, look for the signs of life. If you're seeing birds along the shore, if you're seeing minnows, if you're seeing bluegill, well, the bass are going to be in that area. If you see shad, you see minnows, you may want to go with a white colored square bill or crankbait. But if you're seeing sunfish in the area, you might want to try something like that. That will greatly help your chances if you can already throw what those bass are tuned in on. Now, lastly, I'm going to go with topwater. And remember what I said at the very beginning of the video about flat, calm surface and going with the wacky rig. Well, I'm not going with this during flat, calm surface. Now, I could, but if I am, I'm using something much more subtle, like a tail-weighted boy howdy or a chug bug, something small and subtle. This is when I have some chop on the water. I've got some wind on the water, and it doesn't matter if it's cloudy, and it doesn't matter if it's bluebird skies. These things are money. Something like a buzzbait. Remember, when it comes to topwater is essentially like any other type of fishing. You need to pick the right bait for the right situation. If you've got calm or flat water, go with something a little bit more subtle. It doesn't necessarily have to be slow. You know, maybe a wake bait would be good. Something that comes through the water but doesn't make a whole lot of noise. And you elevate the noise level of that bait as you go up in the conditions. You've got some chop on the water, you've got some good wind going on. Well, you're going to need a nice noisy bait to cut through all that clutter to get the bass's attention. I have found that that is the most effective way for me to get those really nice topwater bites. And the great thing about getting topwater bites is it's going to be a bigger quality of fish anyway. So don't be afraid to tie topwater on whenever you get a chance to. It doesn't matter based on the conditions. Just go ahead and tie these on and you'll find that it can be very effective even when you didn't think topwater could be effective. So there you have it. My favorite ways to fish for the month of April based on the conditions that I'm seeing when I get out to the water. And once again, I would like to say thank you to the fine folks at Honding for sending me this spinning reel and rod. I do have a couple of things to say about it, a few thoughts about it. The weight of this rod is a little bit front weighted. I wish it was balanced a little bit better, but that's a minor gripe, especially for the feel that this rod has. It's about a $90 rod, so for that price, it worked exceptionally well. The reel is a 5.2 to 1 gear ratio, 9-ball bearing reel. It's got a nice backstop, so it really doesn't have any play in the backstop at all in the back reeling. The drag on it was very nice, but the one thing about it is I wish it did have a higher gear ratio. 5.2 to 1 is a bit on the slow side. Now, it didn't really affect how I was fishing for the most part because I used it with wacky rigs and I used it a lot with jerkbaits and some finesse topwater like a jitterbug and a head and torpedo. But again, great rod. Check them out. I was very, very satisfied with it. So, like I said, check these guys out. Give them a try. Tell me what you think. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.